This is all of it. I'm Allison Stewart, live from the WNYC studios in Soho. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us. I'm grateful that you're here. I want to tell you about an upcoming event. Next week, our friends at the New York Public Library will be hosting a big summer book club in conjunction with the Public Theater, and public radio is involved. I'll be there to interview author N.K. Jemisin. The library has spent the summer encouraging everyone to read The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. And now it's time to celebrate. So join me, NK, and special featured performers for a literary celebration in Central Park. That's happening on Monday, August 17th at 8 p.m. at the Delacorte Theater. Tickets are free. You can get them right outside the Delacorte. Arrive about an hour before showtime to snag a ticket, and I hope to see you there. That's in the future. Coming up later on the show today, we'll talk about 3 art exhibits in our area. But first, we've got an hour of films that deal with some serious subjects in very different ways. That's the plan. Let's get this started with American Doctor. The documentary American Doctor follows 3 physicians who volunteered their services at a hospital in Gaza, one Muslim, one Jewish, and one Zoroastrian. Dr. Feroz Sidwa, hope I pronounced that right, he went to Nasser Hospital. The more time he spent there, the more disturbed he was by what he witnessed, as was Dr. Mark Perlmutter, who could be very, very blunt. Dr. Thayer Ahmad is an emergency medicine physician in Chicago. He's also Palestinian-American, which created an extra set of challenges when he attempted to enter Gaza. They became key witnesses to the horrors of the war. They see deaths of countless children and experience targeted attacks on the hospital. Documentarian Posey Tang was there to capture it all on camera. One review of the film said, "It's hard to make a documentary about the war in Gaza that does not feel overtly political." And yet director Posey Tang's unflinching new expose, American Doctor, is first and foremost a humanitarian story, one in which medicine and moral decency take precedence over partisanship. American Doctor premiered at Sundance and will be in theaters this Friday. I'm joined now by Dr. Ahmad, Dr. Sidwa, and documentarian Posey Tang. It's nice to meet all of you.
Thank you for having us.
And listeners, for this conversation, it may include descriptions of violence, including against children. I just wanted you to know that. Po, what was your goal when you went in to make this film, and how did that goal change over time?
Allison, firstly, I should say I did not go to Gaza. That was never going to happen for me. Mm-hmm. And so, this was, I'll tell you the motivations first and then how we did it. Okay. I used to work as a documentary commissioner for Al Jazeera English. And so, a year, this was, when the genocide started, I was already an executive for a studio, so at a different entity. But a year into the genocide and just seeing former colleagues of mine at Al Jazeera getting targeted and executed, it honestly did something to me, and I just realized I cannot continue on with that job.
Do you remember the day when you felt that?
It was soon after, I would say, end of 2023, towards November, December. I actually remember the specific event that it just destroyed me. So I should say my first job 2+ decades ago, I was a camera person for the Associated Press. That was like my first job. Mm-hmm. And so there was a video online of this camera person for Al Jazeera English. His name is Samir Abu Daqqa. And it was a video that was posted of him online after he had been killed and targeted. And he was embracing his family. I think they were living in Scandinavia somewhere. And it just destroyed me. Somebody who was a journalist and so good in the field. And then there was also this moment of silence in the documentary industry. And I have held positions, various journalism positions across newsrooms. I was a reporter for the New York Times. I worked for Al Jazeera. I was a camera person for the Associated Press. I was an independent freelance camera person for Agence France Presse. So to live and sit in New York and just feel this deafening silence, I can't continue as is. So then began the search, end of 2023 into 2024. I want to contribute something. I want to do something in regards to what is going on in Gaza. But what? What can I do as an American who feels deeply complicit with our taxpayer money going to fund this and shredding children essentially with 2,000-pound bombs? But I didn't know what. And then I came across this news report. Reporter interviewed Dr. Mark Perlmutter, the Jewish doctor, and the reporter asked him on camera, Dr. Perlmutter, you just came back from Gaza. Why do you think there's no ceasefire? And Mark, who is he wears his heart on his sleeve, does not mince words.
No, he doesn't.
Mark says to the camera straight, there's no ceasefire because politicians are expletive to lobby groups. And I thought to myself, oh my, who is this man? Mm-hmm. And I want to go meet him. And it turns out a few days later, he was coming to New York to be the keynote speaker for a fundraiser raising money for Palestinian children's relief. And I remember meeting him, in this room in Sony Hall, and it was mostly Muslims, Palestinians, Arabs trying to raise money. And when Mark spoke, the room fell silent. Mm-hmm. And people were weeping. And when it ended, I still remember the host of the evening said something like, my brother, we will not forget what you have done for us. So I introduced myself, and Mark, very soon after, within that same week, I believe, introduced me to Dr. Thair Ahmad and Dr. Feroz Sidwa.
Dr. Ahmad, why did you become a doctor?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think it ties a lot into just being Palestinian and my own father, who passed away a few years ago, struggling with his health as a child and having to deal with occupation and apartheid, and not being able to get the treatment that he needed, that I believe ultimately ended with him having to pass away as early as he did. But growing up, you always wanted to be able to contribute. You always wanted to be able to give back to society. And I didn't always know that I wanted to be a physician. But when I visited Gaza for the first time in 2009 after Operation Cast Lead, I knew that I wanted to be involved in humanitarian relief. And I felt being a healthcare worker, you could have the biggest impact. I should also mention that I come from Little Palestine in Chicago. It's the largest Palestinian diaspora. And as I was navigating through undergraduate studies and medical school, it became clear that the community said that you're going to be one of our physicians and you need to take care of us. And so I'm always on call anytime they need anything, whether it's a sniffle or a sprained thumb, the community turns to me. And that's exactly why I went into it in the first place.
Dr. Sidwa, why did you become a doctor?
My dad's a physician, and so when I went to college, that was just the only thing I actually thought of doing. But then the second Intifada broke out when I was a freshman, and it became the big college thing. But then obviously 9/11 happened the next year, and we invaded Afghanistan, we invaded Iraq. So my years of college, 2000 to 2004, were very politicizing in general. By the end of it, I thought, well, maybe medicine isn't actually the right thing to do. Maybe I should do law or politics, or I don't know. I was 21, 22, didn't know what to do. So actually, I volunteered with a Palestinian Jewish cooperative in the city of Haifa in Israel, and I lived there for about a year. And during that time, I would tour around in the West Bank, and the people I naturally gravitated to were the physicians that I would meet, and a lot of Palestinian physicians, obviously, but also there were Israeli physicians who would still go into the hospitals there from Physicians for Human Rights Israel. And one of them took me aside and he said, Feroz, if you would live like these Palestinians do, meaning they don't get any special privileges for being a doctor, they're not wealthy, maybe they can buy a used car from somebody, but that's, the extent of their wealth, then be a doctor. Then otherwise don't be. And I understood what he was saying in that it's, it should be a selfless profession and whatever else, but which is all true. But I thought to myself, I'm actually more like this Israeli fellow that's talking to me because I'm from the privileged society. I'm from the society that's attacking other people. I'm not the victim of that attack. Despite my physical appearance maybe fitting more there than here, that's just the situation. I was born here. I grew up here. It's the only culture and the only language I know. So for me, I said to myself, if I'm going to be a doctor, am I going to be a physician who just does his job and then goes home and pats himself on the back, or am I going to be somebody who takes the oath maybe to another level and says, I'm obligated to stand with people that my government is hurting and to bear witness to what's going on with them, not just in Palestine and plenty of other places that I've worked too. So that's how I ended up being a doctor, yeah.
It's interesting, the beginning of the film, Poe, you are taken to task by Dr. Perlmutter for not showing children. it's a little bit of a sort of a tense moment between the two of you. What did you think in that moment when he said, you have to show these images of these hurt and killed children?
I think there was a moment of realization of like, what am I doing here? Why am I making this film? And you can't see my face because the camera is pointing at Mark, but you know, I'm actually crying because I'm deeply ashamed. You know, at all my years as a journalist, and also in filmmaking as a producer, you know, it's always such a delicate balance. How much do you show? You know, you show too much and it's gratuitous and people turn away and you're not being effective. You show too little and it's not real. And then you want to protect, you know, the dignity of those who have survived, those who have passed. But in this case, Mark, you know, he was telling me like, you know, you need to do this because our taxpayers are paying for this, as are you, as is my neighbor, as am I. And so I'm so glad, like, that scene, it was the second day of me filming with Mark, and that set the tone of what the film American Doctor is going to be.
As you describe the film American Doctor to people, how do you describe it?
It depends who's asking.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know,
what do you
mean? Because I think people have different thoughts and perceptions about what's happening in Gaza, West Bank, Palestine. And the point of that film was always like, for me, like, how do I bring it home to America, to the United States? I don't want people to think, oh, it's so far away. So to the general public, I would always say, well, if the film American Doctor, it's like The Pit. The difference is it's real and it's set in Gaza. And it features 3 American doctors, Palestinian, Jewish, and Zoroastrian, and we are immersed in their world as they, you know, work in a besieged hospital, and then they come back to tell everybody, and especially to Congress, what is going on there. So that's how I would phrase it. And I decided a long time ago, and I didn't even tell my team members, I didn't even tell you that Faroz that I was going to call it American Doctor, because obviously my heart ached to call it something else. But I also know, like, if I call it American Doctor, maybe this is one way we could Trojan horse and bring it back to the United States, Palestine.
Dr. Sidwell, what does a typical day at a hospital in Gaza look like?
Well, when I went the second time, that's when the film crew there was filming us. So at Nasser, I got there on March 6th, and until March 18th, there was a ceasefire on. What's called a ceasefire. There's still a lot of bombing and shooting, but way less than when the ceasefire is off. So it was basically every day looked like a busy day at my hospital in California. Maybe 15 or 20 trauma patients would come in, but we could operate on them at like a normal pace. We could take care of them at a normal pace. It was just a busy day. But March 18th and onward, you know, on the morning of March 18th, starting at about 2:30 in the morning, this is last year, there was this huge aerial blitz that killed about 400 people in 10 minutes. Now, Nasser is the biggest hospital in Gaza at this point, and so all of the patients on the western side of Khan Yunis, and most of them on the eastern side as well, are all coming to Nasser all at the same time. Nasser it has about 250 beds, and in that morning, we saw 221 trauma patients. Wow. Half of them are small children. Virtually all of them are refugees. The hospital is just completely overwhelmed. 45 minutes into that mass casualty event, the guy who's running it, his name is Khalid Al-Sair. He's a general surgeon. He's 10 years younger than I am. So he's not very far out of residency. 45 minutes into running this mass casualty at the front of the hospital, the body of the father of the woman that he was supposed to marry that day is brought to him. He's clearly dead. He has to tell the ambulance driver to take him straight to the morgue. He steps aside for 40 seconds, says a prayer, and goes back to work for another 12 hours. That's what working in a hospital in Gaza is. That's a typical day. Some horrifying tragedy compounded by some other horrifying tragedy, compounded by the inability because of the starvation of the medical system and the killing of our healthcare workers and the bombing of the hospital and everything else, to actually do what you could do about it almost anywhere else in the world. Yeah.
Dr. Ahmad, you've been to Gaza before, but in the film, we follow as you try to go to Gaza and you fail to be admitted. What were the reasons given to you?
Many people who have been in a similar situation, oftentimes that's part of the pain of being rejected. Is there is no explicit reason that's being given, and I actually, took this to our embassy in Jerusalem, the United States Embassy in Jerusalem, to the State Department, to members of Congress, to the Senate. I'm telling them I've been denied and asking them to elevate the case with their Israeli partners, with their friends in the Israeli embassy in D.C. And what we would get in response were very vague and differing answers. Some would say this is just like a national security thing. Some would say that this is just kind of an assessment that was made and that at that time it wasn't needed. And then some would say it's because you're Palestinian and because your grandparents and your parents are Palestinians born in Palestine. I think the last part is probably most true, given that most Palestinian internationals are not allowed into Gaza. And, when this happened in the film, it actually made me want to take a step back and not be a part of the film anymore.
Interesting. Why?
I just thought, well, what value does that story have now? I'm not able to enter. I'm not able to provide that sort of witness testimony that I thought would be crucial towards the film. But thankfully, Poe and the team felt that it was going to be an important part of the story, and I'm glad that's in there. I'm glad people can see that Palestinians are being prevented from access to their land. My family's originally from Gaza, and there is a real chance I may never, ever be able to enter into Gaza again, given what the Israelis are doing and how they're preventing us from being able to access it. And the idea that somebody who looks like I do, I look like the people in Gaza, my kids look like the kids in Gaza, I speak the language, I even speak the same dialect, we have the same culture and customs. The idea that we're actively being prevented from being united and being with each other, I think that's an important message that comes through pretty clearly in the film.
Your kids are cute, by the way.
Thank you.
We're discussing the film, The American Doctor. It follows American physicians as they try to volunteer their skills and let the public know what life is like at a Gaza hospital. My guests are Dr. Thayer Ahmad, Dr. Feroz Soudwa, and director Posty Tang. American Doctor is in theaters this Friday. Dr. Soudwa, how does your faith play into your role being a doctor personally?
Honestly, for me, it doesn't. I'm not a religious person at all, but my parents are. They're very deeply religious, and
Zoroastrian was so.
Yeah.
I went down a rabbit hole. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, a lot of people have said the same thing. It's not a common thing that people encounter for sure. But no, for my
good
parents,
deeds.
There's this phrase "humat hukta and huvarashta," which means do good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Pretty basic, but it kind of it seems like a simple golden rule that everybody can relate to. But no, my parents are, and they're the example that they set for me, not in religious dogmatism, but in their actions in their lives. They're both extremely generous, extremely decent people. And that example was just set for me very much by example, not by preaching, but by doing. For me, that's really what it was.
What were your conversations like with Dr. Perlmutter, who is Jewish? Poe?
Oh, well, Mark's a very youthful-looking 70-year-old. So I feel like he's an elder in many ways. Mm-hmm. And so he would, sometimes I would talk to Mark. And when you watch the film, you realize, like, he really does not mince any words. And so sometimes in my conversations with Mark, I was like, hey, Mark, hey, have you thought, hey, man, maybe just rephrase it a little bit, And Mark would yell at me, I am, at that time, I'm 69 years old. I have no time. And you shouldn't as well. Okay? So he taught me to speak clearly and not be afraid. And I think about myself. I mean, I'm a woman. I'm a person of color. I'm from a minoritized community. And sometimes I feel I hold myself back. And here is somebody teaching me, do not, because you should not in this moment when what is happening in Gaza. So those were the lessons, and that he continued to teach me throughout production, and I carry that with me.
There's a moment when Dr. Perlmutter says something, and you flinch a little bit. Which one?
Oh, is it when we're on CNN?
Yeah.
Oh,
What made you flinch at that moment?
I don't. I hope I didn't flinch, but
A little bit. You can see it in your face.
but yeah, no. Mark is oh, I don't want to give away parts of the movie, but yeah, Mark's having an argument with the fellow on CNN, and I just didn't think it would be very effective in that moment. But Mark is really kind of a I think Mark's story can shows how easily somebody can understand what's going on in Gaza when they see it themselves. He and I went there. The first time we went there was March and April of 2024. We went to European Hospital together, and there was a moment when he had found an orthopedic surgical nurse named Tamer, who had been shot in the operating room, taken to one of these torture camps, starved, tortured further, medically neglected. And when we found him at European Hospital, he was in septic shock, and we had to take care of him. And that the night that Mark met him, and we took care of him that night, and then we're having dinner later in the evening, Mark was really, really upset. He said, he's just kind of sitting there furious. Why would they treat a nurse this way? Why would they treat a nurse this way? He's not a threat. He's not hurting anybody. And finally, I had my hand on his shoulder and I said, Mark, you've seen that they shoot children here. Why do you think they wouldn't treat a nurse this way? And I'm not proud of this. It actually makes me really sad, but Mark just broke down crying. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the moment when he realized that all of the stuff he had been taught about what's going on in this place was just complete nonsense. And he couldn't countenance that anymore.
And Allison, can I say something? Because you asked at the beginning when we spoke, like, how did we make it? I want to tell you about our director of photography.
Yeah, please.
Ibrahim Alotla in Gaza and our co-producer Mohammed Sawaf. What some of these doctors are going through, to some extent, our camera folks and their families, they're going through it as well. Mm-hmm. And so, it's just... It's one of those things where, as we're making the film and you're hearing all these stories, our own team is going through that. And so one is crushing, but at the same time, they are giving everything so that we can make this film. But they made us promise. Make sure the film goes back to the United States and make sure it is heard loud and clear.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting, Dr. Ahmad. Did you think a film would have an impact on what is going on in Gaza?
No, I didn't. I mean, to be honest with you, I think I'll say Feroz also feels the same way, but I think we were really pessimistic. Mm-hmm. I didn't think because we had done all this advocacy work, we were doing so much media, and it wasn't making a difference. And so we were, when Poe came up with this idea, we really, for me, I was like, okay, this is just somebody who has good intentions, cares about what's going on and wants to do something, but I didn't think it could make a difference. And then I saw the film that she made, and I said, oh my God, this is incredibly powerful. This is something that I wish I could have done in the last 2.5 years to get the message across. And there's something about how this film is able to bring together this story that I think will resonate with audiences, that I hope activates people, especially at a time when, in this country, there are a lot of things happening. And I am just, I was so wrong, and I'm glad at how wrong I was. I mean, this is just, it's incredible to see how people react afterwards. It's amazing to talk to them. It's incredible to see that there are still amazing people in this world, despite corporate media and some of the elected officials dividing us and making things so polarizing. It's incredible to see how much people care and are willing to care and can empathize despite growing up as a Palestinian and feeling like we were so dehumanized like so many other groups. And so the power of film is something I will never underestimate again.
Humanitarian law says, quote, health establishments and units, including hospitals, should not be attacked. We see bomb strikes against Nasser Hospital. One of the patients that you worked on was killed. Beyond the immediate death and destruction, Dr. Sidwa, what are the long-term effects of hospital attacks in Gaza?
There's a few. The main one I fear is it's going to be hospital attacks everywhere else. Before the invasion of Gaza in October 2023, the war in Ukraine was the worst for healthcare workers in the world. And I've worked in Ukraine 3 times. I've actually spent more time there than I have in Gaza. And ever since the Israeli invasion, the U.S. Israeli invasion of Gaza, the rate of killing of healthcare workers has been quite literally 100 times higher in Gaza than in the next worst case in the world, Ukraine. There's nobody is dropping 2,000-pound bombs anywhere near hospitals anywhere else in the world. Nobody is rounding up healthcare workers en masse and torturing them like that nurse Tamar that I mentioned. But this kind of thing is going to be normalized, and it's being normalized not just by Israel but by the United States. That's very, very dangerous. But in terms of what it means for the Israelis and the Palestinians, it means it's making the conflict that much deadlier, that much more violent. And when these long-term intractable civil wars get into this just absolute level of barbarity, it's very hard to pull back from them.
The name of the film is American Doctor. It will be in theaters this Friday. My guests have been documentarian Posi Tang, Dr. Thayer Ahmad, and Feroz Sidwa, Dr. Feroz Sidwa. It's nice to meet you all. Thank you so much for joining us.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.